The air in the high desert carried the scent of piñon pine and dry earth, a familiar perfume to Thalia Reyes. It was the scent of solitude, of resilience, of a life carved out at the edge of wilderness. But solitude had shifted shape since Jasper, her bright-eyed 4-year-old son, had filled her small cabin with the boundless energy of childhood. And it had shifted again, profoundly, the day the battered carrier arrived, holding a creature born of that same wilderness, yet destined never to fully return. Zephyr. The name, meaning a gentle breeze, felt like a hopeful prayer whispered over the fierce, wild spirit contained within the wire mesh. She was a bobcat, barely more than a year old, her coat a tapestry of muted golds and browns, dappled with the shadowy spots of her kind. Her ears, tipped with elegant black tufts, swiveled constantly, capturing the unfamiliar symphony of Thalia's home. But it was her eyes, large, luminous, and startlingly intelligent, that held Thalia captive. They held the untamed soul of the wild, yet flickered with an unnerving vulnerability. Zephyr was deemed unreleasable. A tangle with a carelessly set trap months ago had left her with a permanent injury, a hind leg that healed awkwardly, giving her a subtle, uneven gait. She could move, yes, even with surprising speed when startled, but the intricate ballet of a predator, the explosive bursts needed to bring down swift prey, was forever beyond her. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center had done all they could. Releasing her would have been a death sentence, slow starvation or becoming easy prey herself. Thalia, a wildlife photographer with a heart notoriously softer than the desert sun was strong, had heard Zephyr's story through the small network of local conservationists. The center was overcrowded. Options were grim. Taking in a wild bobcat, even an injured one, wasn't a decision made lightly. It was a commitment fraught with complexities, potential dangers, and the constant, heavy weight of responsibility. Domestic cats were one thing. A bobcat, hardwired with instincts honed over millennia, was entirely another. Yet, looking into those deep, knowing eyes, Thalia felt a connection she couldn't dismiss. It wasn't pity, not entirely. It was a sense of recognition, perhaps. The sight of a fellow creature hampered, needing sanctuary, a safe harbor from a world that no longer quite fit. Her property, bordering vast tracts of undeveloped land, already had a sturdy, spacious enclosure built years ago for a rescued owl that had eventually been released. It could be adapted, reinforced. "Okay, girl," Thalia had murmured, her voice soft, barely audible above the anxious panting from the carrier. "Let's see if we can make this work." The initial days were a delicate dance of distance and observation. Thalia spent hours simply sitting near the enclosure, talking quietly, letting Zephyr grow accustomed to her presence, her scent, the rhythm of her voice. Zephyr remained wary, often retreating to the small, den-like structure Thalia had built within the enclosure, her gaze tracking Thalia's every move. There were no signs of aggression, no hissing or spitting, just a profound, watchful stillness. Jasper, naturally curious, was kept at a safe distance initially. Thalia explained in simple terms a 4-year-old could grasp that Zephyr was a wild animal, beautiful but not a pet like their neighbor's friendly Labrador. "We watch her, Jazz," she'd said, pointing towards the enclosure. "We watch her, and we let her feel safe. She's hurt, and she needs kindness, but from far away." Jasper, fascinated, would stand beside his mother, small hand gripping hers, his blue eyes wide as he watched the bobcat. "Kitty has spots," he'd whisper, his voice filled with awe. Slowly, tentatively, Zephyr began to reveal glimpses of an unexpected gentleness. She never paced frantically like some captive animals. Instead, she seemed to study her surroundings with intense concentration. She'd sit atop the large, sun-warmed rock in her enclosure, cleaning her fur meticulously, the injured leg tucked carefully beneath her. Sometimes, when Thalia brought her food, commercially prepared raw meat supplemented according to the rehab center's guidelines, Zephyr would emit a low rumbling sound, a vibration deep in her chest that wasn't quite a purr but felt like acknowledgement, perhaps even a flicker of contentment. Thalia began allowing Zephyr short, supervised periods outside the main enclosure, within a secondary fenced area adjacent to the house, a sort of airlock space where the Bobcat could experience more freedom while still being contained. It was during these times that the most surprising interactions occurred. Zephyr showed an intense, quiet curiosity towards Jasper. She never approached him directly, never made any move that felt predatory or threatening. Instead, she would settle herself a respectful distance away, often partially hidden behind a sturdy juniper bush, and simply watch him. She watched him stack wooden blocks on the porch steps, her head tilted slightly, tufted ears twitching. She watched him chase butterflies across the dusty yard, her golden eyes following his erratic movements. There was a stillness in her observation, a focused attention that felt less like predator assessing prey and more like something else. Something Thalia couldn't quite name, but that stirred a warmth deep within her. Jasper, in turn, lost his initial apprehension. He'd chatter away to the Bobcat, telling her about his day, showing her his favorite toy truck. "Zephyr, see! Red truck! Vroom, vroom!" he'd exclaim, holding it up. Zephyr would blink slowly, a gesture Thalia had learned was a sign of relaxation, of non-threat, in felines. She never responded in any overt way, but she never retreated either. She simply watched, a silent, spotted sentinel on the periphery of Jasper's bright, innocent world. Thalia remained ever vigilant. She never forgot Zephyr's wild nature. She reinforced safety protocols constantly, drumming into Jasper the importance of never reaching through the fence, never startling the Bobcat. Yet a tentative trust was weaving itself into the fabric of their days. Zephyr seemed to understand the boundaries, seemed to accept the presence of the small human and the tall one who brought food and spoke in soft tones. The low rumble became more frequent, sometimes starting even before Thalia reached the enclosure gate. Life settled into a new, unique rhythm. The scent of piñon and dust now mingled with the faint, musky scent of Bobcat. Jasper's laughter often echoed against Zephyr's quiet presence. Thalia found herself photographing the Bobcat constantly, captivated by her subtle expressions, the way the light caught the tawny fur, the sheer, improbable beauty of having this wild creature woven, however cautiously, into their lives. She felt a growing sense of peace, a feeling that giving Zephyr sanctuary had somehow completed their little family circle in an unexpected way. The danger, the wildness, seemed contained, managed, softened by the Bobcat's surprisingly placid demeanor. Thalia allowed herself to relax just a little. The day it happened began like any other late spring day in the high desert. The sun climbed high, painting the sky a fierce, cloudless blue. A dry heat settled over the land, making the air shimmer above the sparse vegetation. Thalia had let Zephyr out into the secondary fenced yard for her morning stretch and exploration. Jasper was playing near the porch, happily engrossed with a collection of smooth stones he was arranging into patterns. Thalia watched them both, a familiar warmth spreading through her chest. Zephyr was lounging near her favorite juniper bush, occasionally flicking an ear at a buzzing insect, while Jasper hummed tunelessly to his rocks. The phone rang inside the cabin, a harsh, unwelcome intrusion into the morning's peace. It was the vet's office, confirming an upcoming routine checkup for Zephyr. Thalia hesitated, glancing back towards the yard. Jasper was still absorbed. Zephyr was dozing, or seemed to be. It would only take a minute, just 60 seconds to confirm the appointment. What could possibly happen in 60 seconds? "Stay right there, sweet pea," she called to Jasper, her voice casual. "Mommy will be right back." She stepped inside, picking up the receiver, her back to the door, but her senses still half tuned to the sounds outside. The conversation was brief, logistical. Date confirmed, time set. Thalia thanked the receptionist, her mind already drifting back to the yard. As she hung up, a sound pricked through the ordinary quiet, a sound that sent a jolt of pure, ice-cold adrenaline through her veins. A rattle. Dry, insistent, menacingly close. She whirled around, heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Her eyes flew to the porch, to the spot where Jasper had been playing. He wasn't there. Panic seized her, sharp and suffocating. Her gaze swept the yard frantically. And then she saw them. The scene was a frozen tableau of horror. Not 10 feet from the porch steps, coiled with lethal intent, was a large rattlesnake, its spade-shaped head raised, its tail a blur of vibrating scales. Jasper stood paralyzed just a few feet away, his small face pale with shock, his eyes locked on the terrifying creature. He hadn't screamed, hadn't moved. But something else was moving. Zephyr. The bobcat, usually so placid, so unobtrusive, was a blur of tawny fur and focused intensity. She wasn't attacking the snake. Instead, she had Jasper by the back of his loose cotton shirt, her teeth clamped firmly but, Thalia registered with a detached part of her brain, not breaking the skin. Zephyr was dragging him, literally pulling the frozen 40-pound child backwards, away from the coiled danger. It happened in seconds that stretched into an eternity. Zephyr's low, guttural growl tore through the air, a sound utterly primal and protective. The snake, startled by the sudden movement, shifted its attention. It struck. Not at Jasper, who was now being hauled several feet further back, but at the creature intervening. Thalia saw the lightning-fast strike, saw Zephyr flinch violently as the fangs embedded themselves in her front leg near the shoulder. A choked cry escaped the bobcat, a sound of pain that ripped through Thalia's own fear. Zephyr didn't release Jasper. She stumbled, her injured hind leg buckling slightly, but she kept pulling, dragging Jasper another precious foot away before the snake recoiled, readying for another strike. Thalia finally broke free from her paralysis. "Jasper! Zephyr!" she screamed, snatching a long-handled garden rake leaning against the cabin wall. She burst through the door, running towards the confrontation, brandishing the rake like a weapon. Her sudden appearance, the loud scream, startled the snake. It hesitated, then, perhaps sensing a larger threat, uncoiled rapidly and slithered away into the underbrush, its rattle fading into the sudden, ringing silence. Thalia reached Jasper, dropping the rake and sweeping him into her arms, her body trembling uncontrollably. "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Did it bite you?" she gasped, frantically checking his arms, his legs, his face. He was crying now, huge, gulping sobs, burying his face against her shoulder, but blessedly, miraculously, he was unharmed. Then her eyes fell on Zephyr. The bobcat had released Jasper's shirt and slumped to the ground a few feet away. She was panting heavily, her sides heaving. Her front leg was already beginning to swell visibly around 2 distinct puncture marks, dark blood welling up. She lifted her head, her golden eyes meeting Thalia's, and Thalia saw not wildness, not fear, but something that looked heartbreakingly like pain and exhaustion. The low, protective growl had subsided, replaced by shallow, rapid breaths. "Oh, Zephyr," Thalia choked out, tears streaming down her face, blurring her vision. She gently settled a still sobbing Jasper onto the porch steps. "Stay here, baby. Stay right here." Her mind raced. Rattlesnake bite. Venom. Time was critical. She needed to get Zephyr to the emergency veterinary clinic 40 minutes away on a good day. She grabbed old towels from the cabin, her hands shaking so badly she could barely unfold them. Approaching Zephyr cautiously, speaking in low, soothing tones, she knelt beside the injured bobcat. "Easy, girl. Easy. I need to help you. We need to get you help." Zephyr didn't resist as Thalia gently wrapped the towels around her, applying light pressure near the bite site as she'd learned in wildlife first aid courses, though she knew it was likely futile against potent snake venom. The bobcat whimpered softly, a heartbreaking sound that twisted Thalia's insides. Carefully, supporting Zephyr's weight, Thalia lifted the surprisingly heavy animal. Zephyr remained limp, trusting, her head lolling slightly against Thalia's arm. The drive to the clinic was a blur of controlled panic. Jasper, strapped into his car seat in the back, had finally quieted, his eyes wide and fixed on the still form of the bobcat lying on the towels spread across the passenger seat. Thalia drove fast, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against the silence, broken only by Zephyr's shallow breathing and the occasional soft whimper. She kept glancing over, murmuring words of encouragement, of desperation. "Hang on, Zephyr. Please, hang on. You saved him. You saved my baby. Just hang on." She tried not to think about the implications. Rattlesnake venom was destructive, tissue-damaging, potentially fatal, especially for an animal Zephyr's size. She tried not to think about the pain Zephyr must be in. Most of all, she tried not to think about the staggering, unbelievable fact of what had just happened. A wild bobcat, deemed unreleasable, had deliberately, protectively, placed herself between a venomous snake and a human child. Arriving at the clinic, Thalia burst through the doors, Zephyr cradled carefully in her arms. The urgency in her voice, the sight of the injured bobcat, spurred the staff into immediate action. Dr. Ramirez, the clinic's lead veterinarian, a woman with calm eyes and capable hands who knew Zephyr's history, took charge instantly. "Rattlesnake bite," Thalia gasped, relaying the horrifying events in fragmented sentences. She pulled Jasper away. The snake bit her leg. Dr. Ramirez examined the rapidly swelling limb, her expression grave. "Okay, Thalia, let's get her stabilized. We'll start anti-venom immediately. IV fluids, pain management." The next few hours were an agonizing wait. Thalia sat in the sterile waiting room, Jasper curled asleep on the chair beside her, his small face still tear-streaked. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a roiling mix of fear, gratitude, and disbelief. She replayed the scene in the yard over and over. The snake, Jasper's frozen terror, Zephyr's decisive, courageous action. It defied everything she knew about wild animal behavior, especially bobcats, which were typically elusive and solitary, avoiding humans whenever possible. Protection of young wasn't unheard of, but protecting the young of a different species, a human child? It was extraordinary. Finally, Dr. Ramirez emerged, her expression cautiously optimistic. "She's responding to the antivenom, Thalia. Her vital signs are stabilizing. The swelling is significant, and there will be considerable tissue damage, but right now, it looks like she's going to pull through." Relief washed over Thalia so intensely her knees nearly buckled. Tears welled up again, this time not from fear, but overwhelming gratitude. "Oh, thank God. Thank you." "She's a tough cat," Dr. Ramirez said, shaking her head slightly. "And what you described, dragging Jasper away, that's highly unusual behavior. Protective instincts are strong, but usually directed towards their own kin. I've worked with wildlife rescues for 20 years, Thalia. I've never seen anything quite like it, especially from a bobcat towards a human child." "She's always been different," Thalia whispered, thinking of Zephyr's quiet watchfulness, her gentle tolerance of Jasper. Calm, observant. "Perhaps," Dr. Ramirez mused, "her own vulnerability, her reliance on you, created a different kind of bond. Perhaps she sees Jasper in some way as part of her den, her safe territory? It's speculation, of course. Animals constantly surprise us. But what's clear is that she acted decisively to protect him, at great risk to herself. She paused, meeting Thalia's eyes. "She saved his life, Thalia, no question about it." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Zephyr, the wild creature Thalia had offered sanctuary out of compassion, had repaid that kindness with an act of staggering bravery, weaving herself irrevocably into the fabric of their family, not just as a resident, but as a protector. Zephyr's recovery was slow but steady. She spent several days at the clinic on IV fluids and pain medication, the tissue around the bite site angry and bruised, but gradually beginning to heal. Thalia and Jasper visited every day. Jasper, now understanding the gravity of what Zephyr had done, would sit quietly beside her recovery kennel, talking softly to her. "Thank you, Zephyr," he'd whisper, his small hand resting gently near the wire mesh, but not touching. "Thank you for saving me from the snake." Zephyr, though weak, would often lift her head at the sound of his voice, her golden eyes seeming to focus on him. Sometimes she'd offer that slow, deliberate blink, a silent acknowledgement that felt profound. Thalia would watch them, her heart swelling with an emotion too complex for words, a blend of awe, love, and a fierce, protective gratitude towards this extraordinary creature. When Zephyr was finally strong enough to come home, things felt different. The cautious distance Thalia had always maintained, the mental boundary separating wild animal from family, had irrevocably blurred. Zephyr was still wild, her instincts deeply ingrained, but her place within their lives had fundamentally shifted. She returned to her enclosure, her front legs still bandaged, her movements careful. But her gaze, when it rested on Jasper, held a new quality. It wasn't just quiet observation anymore. It felt possessive, vigilant. If Jasper wandered too close to the edge of the woods bordering their property, Zephyr, even from within her enclosure, would often rise, positioning herself where she could watch him intently, sometimes emitting a low, soft growl if a deer or even a large bird came too near the fence line. It wasn't aggression towards Jasper. It felt distinctly like a warning to potential threats. Thalia no longer felt the need for the secondary airlock fence as strictly. Under her constant supervision, she allowed Zephyr more integrated time in the main yard when Jasper was outside. Zephyr never sought direct physical contact, never tried to play like a domestic pet, but she would often settle nearby, a silent, watchful presence, her gaze flicking between Jasper and the surrounding environment. She became his spotted shadow, his quiet guardian. The incident had forged a bond stronger than steel, quieter than the desert wind, deeper than any Thalia could have imagined. Zephyr wasn't just an animal Thalia cared for, she was family, an unlikely, unconventional, fiercely loyal member of their small tribe, bound to them not by blood, but by an act of wild courage that defied explanation. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings, Thalia would sit on the porch steps, Jasper leaning sleepily against her side, and watch Zephyr resting on her favorite rock as the stars began to prick the darkening sky. The bobcat's tufted ears would twitch, catching the night sounds, her eyes occasionally reflecting the porch light like chips of amber. Thalia would feel a profound sense of peace, a rightness to their intertwined existence. The wild heart, hampered but not broken, had found not just sanctuary, but a purpose, a connection, a home. And in saving Jasper, Zephyr had rescued a part of Thalia too, reminding her that courage, loyalty, and love could bloom in the most unexpected corners of the wild, bridging worlds with a silent, unbreakable promise. Zephyr, the gentle breeze, had become their steadfast guardian, her quiet presence a constant reminder of the day the wilderness reached out and saved them.